very special event, and our first as we return to in-person events back in Delhi post-pandemic, although we do not declare the pandemic over, but we are still living with it. Ambassador Ina Krishnamurthi has done us the honor of being our first guest for the Ambassador series. This is a very special series that we have where we invite ambassadors from overseas and our ambassadors to distant countries for 1 hour chat, freewheeling chat on issues of importance, current and future. Ambassador Krishnamurthi has taken over from somebody we all used to know quite well, and now she has made a mark for herself in the city. And speaking to her is our former ambassador to Indonesia, Ambassador Gurjeet Singh, who does not need an introduction, certainly not in this room, but he has been our ambassador to very, very important places. Germany, Ethiopia, African Union, and Indonesia. Without further ado, may I hand over to Ambassador Gurjeet Singh, please.
Thank you, Indrani. Congratulations on your new role.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'm very happy to be here with you, and special welcome to Ambassador Ina Krishnamurthi. In your honor, I wore my batik today. All for you. So, this is a very interesting phase. The world is being split into bipolar ways, and the G20 is trying hard to keep it together and give it a multipolarity. So the first thing which we see today are great expectations of Indonesia. Whenever Indonesia chairs an organization, good things happen. I have seen it over ASEAN and the EAS, APEC 2013. Now this is your biggest stage, and next year you will again chair ASEAN and EAS. So this is really, I must say, you have the burden of expectations on you. Second, the great challenges. When you assume the chairmanship of G20, the main agenda was post-pandemic recovery. So these three pillars in your policy were to deal with that. But unfortunately, since then, the world has cleaved. There is the Ukraine crisis, Myanmar has stopped listening to anybody, there's almost a Taiwan crisis. So you are stuck with more to do with your political security pillar than only the economic and socio-cultural pillar that you originally intended. So this is a big challenge to you. Next year you will chair ASEAN, which has its own challenges. Everybody wants ASEAN to be unified and have centrality, but all those concepts are shaky right now, and we look to Indonesia to put ASEAN back together again. And finally, the great opportunity. Following you is India and South Africa and Brazil, 4 countries of the global South, chairing G20 ahead. This, you are the first. So we look to you to set the trend, which the global South can then hold together a thread and prevent this world from deteriorating any further. With those few remarks, may I request you to please make your address before we have more discussion. Over to you, Ambassador.
Thank you, Ambassador Gurjeet Singh. Always nice to see friendly face. You serve in Indonesia, and you make the name in Indonesia because you have been writing so many pieces for Jakarta Post. So pleasure to be here. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum, Namaskar. May peace be upon us all. It is a pleasure for me to be here today at the Ananta Center. I'm very grateful for these opportunities to speak before an esteemed audience. Firstly, of course, congratulations to Ibu Indrani, and thank you for inviting me, and also the warm welcome. And thank you to Ananta Center for quoting the theme of our presidency, G20 presidency, as the theme of discussion this afternoon. President Joko Widodo, in his inauguration remarks marking the beginning of our presidency, which is December 1st, 2021. He committed that Indonesia's presidency will produce a series of real action along with other member states. But then, as we all know, the conflict in Ukraine started 24 February 2022, to be exact. The beginning of Russia's military attack on Ukraine, which has not ended until now. I remember the day very vividly, as it was one day after we sent the save the date invitation to each member states. And we had our coordination on that day, saying that ambassadors prepare, the save the date already sent, yada yada, and boom. So the attack has changed the course and discourse of Indonesia's G20 presidency quite significantly. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, a little bit of history because very important. It was in 2020 that Indonesia and India agreed to swap the presidency of G20. India was earlier expected to hold the presidency this year, but it was coincided with the 75th year of independence. For Indonesia, the presidency of 2023 would be overlapped with the ASEAN chairmanship. So we agreed to swap, and then this is the first time Indonesia's presidency. It is a proud milestone for Indonesia. Everyone knows GDP of G20 is 80% of the world, 75% of global export, 60% of global population. Very proud moment for Indonesia. Learning from our own experience from the pandemic, as well as, the global dynamics. At that time, like Ambassador Gurjit said, we come up with the theme Recover Together, Recover Stronger for our presidency. And the three priority sectors, everyone knows it's about global health, architecture, digital transformation, energy transition. And at that time, we said we need to work together. We need to have inclusivity in the process of working together, so that the solution is also inclusive. In the midst of global dynamics caused by the war, I mentioned about the invitation, there was an endless coordination between us, ambassadors, in all G20 members and the capital about the theme, whether we want to maintain or not. But then the president said, no, G20 we must keep G20 as a catalyst, because the time is there. If South Africa is going to take the presidency, then that means four emerging countries will be, become presidency in 4 years in a row. So we need to put the agenda of developing countries as main focus. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as G20 chair this year, Indonesia has been caught in a center of geopolitical storm, not only because of Ukraine, but Ambassador Gurjit already mentioned, but especially the war. It shows sharp differences among G20 members, which then pose great challenges, not only in organizing the meeting, but especially on having them together in the same room. Some countries, even if you may recall, in the beginning, in March, some country even tempted to boycott all G20 meetings chaired by Indonesia if Russia is in the same room. So, but like I said, we don't want to change the focus of the 3 pillars and as well as all the priorities, because the recovery remains to be our priority as a global society. The world must address the impact of the challenges in the world, and which have ripple effects to everyone. So if you see our steps after March as an implementation of our free and active foreign policy, our President Joko Widodo visited Ukraine, Kyiv, and Moscow as the first Asian leader to visit both sides of the conflict. And not many media cover it, but in 4 days, he kind of have a shuttle diplomacy to 9 European countries. That's in June. Because we see that all parties need to be understood that G20 is not only about what is happening in one region. It needs to think about the impact to others, especially developing countries. While it has become more difficult for the world to sit together, Indonesia affirms its role as G20 presidency in upholding the values of neutrality and impartiality. And throughout its presidency, this is what we have tried and thrive to reach consensus for outcomes in each meetings. However, due to strong positions to certain countries against the invasion in Ukraine, which resulted in strong requests to include a sentence of condemnation in almost every outcome, some meetings failed to produce an agreed outcome. And it is very unfortunate that an outcome needs to be there to be a reference to the future G20 meetings. But what happened in working groups, some fail to do so because the pressure are too much. Let me give examples. So G20 foreign ministerial meeting in July, it did not produce any joint communique. And the G20 climate talks also unable to agree on a joint communique. Climate change, but they need a certain sentence on the war. And same happened. Well, not surprised, the G20 finance minister and central banks governance meeting, G20 energy ministers meeting, G20 digital economy ministers meeting. One of the examples I mentioned, one of the examples of solution is in the foreign ministers meeting. We altered, as the presidency of G20, we altered the document from joint statement to chair summary. The chair summary was able to reflect all the points, which is only a summary, which are discussed and agreed during the meeting, except the condemnation towards Russia. So nevertheless, we are also quite proud that under our presidency, many concrete initiatives has been agreed. One of the example was the financial intermediate, I have to read this, financial intermediary fund for pandemic prevention, preparedness and response. This is for the global health infrastructure. This is for the less developed and developing countries. A long-term financing. Now we have already gathered financial commitments of over 1.4 billion US dollars. And then we expect in the coming months more to come. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I think the war in Ukraine is an eye-opener to many, particularly the notion of no country, no region are immune for similar experience. The war has caused sufferings to civilians and all other people. There is a need to ensure safe and unhindered access for humanitarian assistance for those in need. So this is the notion. We know. What is happening in Ukraine also reflects, unfortunately, and other regions as well. The current world affairs are highlighted by trust deficit among countries, zero-sum paradigm, and erosion of respect for international law. The current world, therefore, ultimately needs wisdom and responsibility of the leaders so that peace and stability can be maintained. That is why my president went to 9 countries in Europe in 4 days, so that he could ask each and every one of the leaders the question of, do you want G20 to crumble and collapse? Or do you want G20 to excel and become the catalyst for global challenges? As the chair of the G20, we strive to bridge differences to find concrete solution of many global challenges. Only then G20 is relevant and benefit the world. For Indonesia, this is another issue. As G20 presidency, continuity is also priority. That is why we welcome the press statement by Ministry of External Affairs, External Relations, that indicates the priority focus of India's G20 presidency in 2023. As it specified similar issues that we have already raised. And we need to create a more and impactful solutions in G20 to so that the solution will not be beneficial for the members but for the worlds. In less than 2 months, we are going to host G20 Summit, 15-16 November. At the conclusion of the summit, we are so looking forward to hand it over to India. And we also look forward for the presence of Prime Minister Modi in the summit. We will do our best efforts to ensure that the summit will be successful in both substantive and logistic aspects. The world is watching us, so we cannot fail in that regard. The Indonesian presidency aims to produce tangible results from G20. We call it concrete deliverables. India has submitted 27 projects as concrete deliverables, which are currently in the creation process. We introduced 2 baskets. One basket is G20 deliverables, which is projects involving members of G20. Another basket is basket 2, we call it. It's projects that involves third party as well. So G20 members and other partners. So we thank India's support for this list of projects, and I'm sure India will continue on with this kind of engagement because concrete deliverables needs to be there so that G20 can answer what people usually in Indonesia very critical, asking why we have this summit that making everyone head turn. So additionally, on substance, continuing the G20 tradition, we have begun our endeavors to achieve an agreed outcome by consensus. We count on India's support to promote this principle of consensus under G20, because whoever the presidency is, this principle is very important. Because if not, then G20 will not achieve its objective as the premier global economic forum, and then G20 will become a forum that is, dragged to become a forum which only debates on single or few issues according to certain countries' interests. So we need this principle of consensus. Like I said, I remind everyone in the beginning, when some people wants to boycott the meeting, some people wants to boycott the results or the discussion of the meetings. But it did not happen because this principle of consensus. Speaking about today's topic, indeed, Indonesia and India are undeniably recover together. Since the early outbreak, Indonesia and India have worked hand in hand and mutually supportive in their fight against COVID-19 pandemic. Just like the old saying, a friend in need, a friend indeed. In 2020, at the start of the COVID, India has been consistently providing in Indonesia with the import of active pharmaceutical ingredients. When India faced with Delta in 2021, Indonesia sent concentrators, cylinders, and whatnot. In 2021, then India reciprocated with the oxygen. So I believe we recover together. On the notion of recovering stronger, definitely we both recovering stronger, because I think we both emerge stronger as among few nations with robust economic growth. India is on course to become the world's third largest economy in 2030. The growth is 13.5% first quarter of 2022. India has just overtaken the UK as the fifth largest economy in the world. So congratulations to India. During the recent SCO summit in Uzbekistan, PM Modi said India's economy is expected to grow at 7.5% this year. So which will be the highest among the major economy. On the other hand, IMF projected Indonesia to become the fifth largest economy in the world in 2030. This year, second quarter, we booked the growth of GDP 5.3%. The growth for 22-23 are projected to be 5.1 and 5.3%, respectively. So while major economies are currently facing high inflation, we both, I think, prudent in macroeconomic policies, and we are able to control our inflation. So I think I would like to conclude, because I believe question and answer may be more interesting, by underlining what many people have said. 21st century is Asia century. And I believe India and Indonesia will play significant roles as transpired by the economic numbers, as previously I mentioned. It is important to note that stronger Indonesia and India relations will be beneficial for not only for both countries, but also to the region of Indo-Pacific and the world. More importantly, we share common values, principle in democracy, and as such, both countries are deemed to be able to shape the future of Asian century. And finally, I would like to wish India great success as G20 presidency in 2023, and I believe India would be an excellent champion in navigating the world through these turbulent times and help us all recover together, recover stronger. Thank you, Ambassador.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Krishnamurthi, for a very lucid and candid presentation. Very happy to hear it from you. So, first of all, I think India backs you fully
Yes.
for your success, because I think in your success lies ours
Yes.
and further. Second part is, you mentioned the walkouts and the absence in the several G20 run-up meetings. Perhaps there is a ray of hope that at the East Asia Summit Foreign Ministers meeting and the ARF Foreign Ministers meeting, they weren't the walkouts. So perhaps the trend is coming that in G20 also there will now be less walkouts. But I can't think of a better player at this time than Indonesia and ASEAN, because you are the one area which has actually remained peaceful forever. So let's keep touch, and therefore you are a good, torchbearer of a peaceful world and making sense. And I'm glad that you did not change the, priorities that you had, because we need to steer the world towards the real priorities. We can't have people promise us globalization, and when we get there, willingly take away through irrelevant sanctions the promises of globalization. We really have to fight that, and I'm glad. So, when you see the possibility of 4 emerging countries from the global south coming, other than the Troika, is there any thinking of how we can better coordinate this?
For G20, I believe, like I said, in early time, especially after the what happened in Europe, after we complete our efforts in saving our own citizens, then the coordination becomes very substantive on what and how G20 will survive this year. So at that time, even the approach is between 9 and 11. 9 emerging economies, 11 developed countries in G20. So there is a kind of a segregation somewhat in the coordination. But I think it wasn't as successful when you divide between developing and developed. It needs to be together, because developing cannot survive without developed countries. So Troika is the best way to consolidate as to what G20 wants to be in terms of year by year. Because 1 year is a very short time for the presidency to have anything, to achieve anything. So that is why the principle of continuity is very important. What the Italian has started, we continue. Some of them may not be accommodated by developing countries, but maybe some of the Italian agenda can be carried out by the developed countries in the G20 format. So that is why we cannot focus on 1 or 2 issues in G20. We need to kind of engage in all issues, the cross-cutting issues as well. So yeah, the best way to consolidate continuity is through Troika. But to communicate is also very important. That is why my president went to Europe and then managed that meeting.
Thank you. My next question, I turn to the bilaterals. Now, I think this around the General Assembly, we probably have the India, Australia, Indonesia foreign ministers trilateral possible. So we always expect Indonesia to adopt ASEAN
Is
plus
it possible?
policy. Huh?
Is it possible Indonesia, India, Australia?
There is a trilateral, and I think it's going to meet around this time. I saw a whole list of trilaterals. I think this is one of them. So I think we always expect Indonesia to do more than ASEAN, what I would call ASEAN plus. For instance, you led ASEAN into the AOIP. I originally thought you'll have an IOIP, but then you took it to ASEAN and made it an ASEAN, which is entirely your creation. And you are the leaders of the strategic autonomy concept for ASEAN. So, what I'm getting at is why don't we, ASEAN Plus and India, do more? For instance, one of the pillars we are discussing is energy. But Indonesia is yet not a member of the International Solar Alliance. So, we need to do more bilaterally also beyond this to take these ideas into the future. Your comment?
On AOIP first. AOIP, why we make it ASEAN? Because ASEAN without Indonesia is not ASEAN. Indonesia without ASEAN is not Indonesia. We live and we grow together with ASEAN because it's our nearest neighbor. So I don't think, the G20, we also need the support of ASEAN brothers and sisters. So it's almost impossible that we have some sort of a concept on Indo-Pacific without involving ASEAN. It's almost impossible. On bilateral engagement, I agree. Fully. 1,000 something %. But the challenge is, it's so apparent. Like, for example, very simple challenge. There is no direct connectivity. No direct flight. That's very apparent. Whenever I go and I make strong remarks about this over and over again, in all interviews and all engagement, I keep saying, yes, we do have the foundation of history. Yes, we do have, right? 1,000 years ago. But we cannot stop only talking about the past. We need to have a connectivity between past, present, and future. The Solar Alliance, our problem, I think, is not so much of the substance, but the communication and how to understand each other better. I think that's the most important thing. Everyone in Indonesia, I think Ambassador Sidarto, he is the previous ambassador, also mentioned this in the talk. We need more acknowledgement of the importance of each other, not only about the past. That's the thing. So we need to again and again making sure that the understanding is at the same level. The frequency of where the future will be between Indonesia and India. That needs to be communicated very well and continuously. If not, then
I agree
there's
with you.
misunderstanding here and there.
And your idea of connectivity is very good. You know, you have Garuda Air, who by name is linked to India but doesn't fly to India. You have Lion Air, where only Asian lions are in India, but Lion Air doesn't fly to India. So I think they need to live up to their reputation and come here. And of course, I was very happy that after AOIP, it's Indonesia and Singapore which actually picked up pillars of the Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative and started collaboration with India. So that is the ASEAN Plus approach that I was seeking. I think small beginnings, but need to go much further. My final question to you is regarding ASEAN, because you are going to head ASEAN and EAS next year, and as I said, you will have to put it together. Because ASEAN is now more divided than in a long time. Initially, you were divided over the Rohingyas, or you lacked consensus. Then came the problem in Myanmar. Then you are divided over Russia. And I think since 2012, you're also divided over China and the code of conduct. So now all these cleavages are become larger than ASEAN and need attention because the world is looking at Myanmar. They appreciate what Indonesia led, but Myanmar didn't play ball. Now, between the Cambodian chairmanship and your chairmanship, I think there is a great expectation that there'll be a more greater unity of ASEAN. And if you have that unity, your centrality is better assured. Your comments.
In a family of nation, just like brothers and sisters, I think unity is understood by being family. Being different is there since the beginning. Even like, for example, Brunei come aboard late, even later for CLM, right? So I think differences will always be there. Some of the issues is quite, how should I say, challenging for ASEAN to manage. But I think what Cambodia has achieved so far with their chairmanship is undeniably excellent because they keep maintaining the communication. The windows, although it's very small, of communication with Myanmar keeps open with Cambodia there as chair. And we do hope with Indonesia as the chair, the window becomes a door so that the opportunity to discuss more issues is there. Another issue on what you mentioned about the plus and how we want to go about it. If you're talking about EAS doesn't have a mechanics of coordination. EAS, the key word is the S.
Yeah.
There is no mechanics in there. So we need to create mechanics. But then the question is, are we going to dwell with the mechanics before EAS answer the challenges? So these questions put ASEAN in some sort of a position where do we start if we want to have ASEAN plus plus. Inviting ASEAN SecGen and ASEAN Chair in G20 is a start, maybe, to include ASEAN in the global dynamics of issues. And as well, 2009, I think, we have action group or something, contact group, G20 contact group, ASEAN G20 contact group, because of Indonesia being there. And then we fight for invitation to SecGen, ASEAN, and the chair of ASEAN to be in G20. That's also an effort to have ASEAN plus plus. And now as the presidency of G20, every time ministers has possibility to meet, my minister always meet, although it's only 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 1 hour, only always brief them on what is happening in G20. So that is, I believe, it's plus plus.
Yes, it is.
Yes. So focusing on EAS, maybe we need to answer first how EAS will deliver, and how EAS be relevant in this dynamics.
That's also your challenge for next year. So we look forward to it. Thank you. Now I open the floor to questions from the esteemed audience. Please, yes, sir. Introduce yourself and ask. And please make it a question and not a comment, and keep it short.
Hi, ma'am. Siddhant from
Hi.
Vion. Bali is the venue of the summit. My question is why Bali was chosen, if you can give some perhaps a trivia about it. And my second question on the bilateral issue in terms of the Chinese aggressiveness with India. What is Indonesia's position or perhaps a comment on the what's happening between India and China?
Bali is decided to be the host because it has reputation of peace in every single engagement at the high level. I remember MC9 WTO meeting. I was there. People came to Bali with very pessimistic idea nothing will happen. And apparently MC9 delivers a document up until 5 o'clock in the morning. And then I just went back to my hotel, taking shower and go back again. 8 o'clock in the morning, we put the gavel on the document. So Bali is that it has that reputation. And second, we need to help Bali because the tourism hurts very badly, severely because of COVID. We need to help Bali. It is our hope that Bali economy will kind of rejuvenate after this summit. And on the second question, I think I regretfully I don't want to comment.
Appreciate it. So I think all major summits in Indonesia are now held in Bali for many years.
Yes.
Originally, when the summits were smaller, before Bandung, it used to be Bogor, the Bogor Palace.
Yes.
Right? But Bogor doesn't have that infrastructure. Bali has a huge convention center, lots of hotels. It has been created as a conference venue, and that is why it's used. But as she rightly said, it is really an island of peace. So when people go there, they feel relaxed that the negotiations get easier. Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Ambassador, Norway is also very much keen.
The African.
You want to know what African members, any new African members to be added to G20?
Not under our presidency. We have already invited the Pacifics because they are our neighbors. I think India wants to invite Africa because the neighboring countries. But for us, our main focus is our neighbors, which is the Pacifics. And we want the Pacifics also to be heard because of climate change and sustainable development goals.
Norway invited by you? No.
No.
So, on Africa, like Spain is a permanent invitee, the African Union chair is a permanent invitee.
Yes.
So this year Senegal.
But not the country.
Yes, whichever country chair. So Senegal will come. And there is also the NAPAD, now called the AU Development Agency. That is there. Now has an interesting history. It was actually created to accommodate Ethiopian Prime Minister Meles, who everybody wanted in G20. But after he passed away, that position remains. So another African gets in. This time I think it will be the chair of the commission and not the NAPAD. So that is the only two. But I don't think it is easy to reopen the question of membership, because there are many people who want to get in. And as she said, there's a delicate imbalance still between developed and developing countries. So I think you have to use the guest route to see what to do. Yes, anybody else?
Good evening, Ambassador.
Sorry. Yes.
This is Nainima from the print. Just on your statement that you said that the war in Ukraine is an eye-opener to many. Was that a message to India? And also, what about the defense cooperation between India and Indonesia? Thank you so much.
Not at all to India only, but I believe this kind of, because like I said, the event itself is a surprise to everyone. When we send the invitation, it seems everything is normal, everything is okay. And all of a sudden, it's sent already with Russia in it, and then all of a sudden, there's this attack, there's this war. and then everyone become edgy and wanting to boycott. It's not it's not a message to anyone in particular, but it's a message of we need to have a safer world to grow and prosper and to think about the social impact of the grassroots. Now the securities of the food security, the energy security, the financial security, this is the impact of whatever happens in the past, right? So it's in front of us. That's the message, actually, not too specific.
Thank you. Defense cooperation between India and Indonesia.
The question is, what do you want to know about that? Oh, what we have done is a lot since I came. Many ships come to India. Many joint dialogue, joint training between two countries. Next week, next week we will have a group of people from our armed forces coming here, learning the education and training programs of India. And then at the same time, there's a plan of a visit of a high official to Indonesia. So many things happen since I arrived, which is seems up on hold during the COVID. But now everything happens. The last ship that we had is 2 weeks ago, I think. Yeah, in Cochin. So many things happen on that regard. So I'm not surprised that in the future maybe this will be elevated to another level.
Very good. So,
Thank you. Ma'am Ambassador, my name is Nalin Kohli. I would like to talk about two things on the bilateral trade. As you know, India is very strong in information technology, and we are now the third largest startup ecosystem in the world. But our bilateral trade in these two areas is rather poor. 70% of our IT goes to US and North America, whereas we are very keen to do it with our neighbors and friendly neighbors. The startup ecosystem, unlike other industries, when you talk of innovation and IT, it's not a zero-sum game. It actually creates value in both the countries. And how do you feel we can accelerate and increase this cooperation? On the point you mentioned about connectivity, I'm just curious, what is coming in the way? Why can't we have a flight between the two countries?
Ambassador, can I take some other questions?
Sure.
Yes, then we save time. Yes,
Sure.
Manish. We are
Excellency,
going to take three more questions. Manish, and then here, and then the lady. All right.
Excellency Manish Chand, India Rights Network. Madam Ambassador, to what extent geopolitical crisis like the Ukraine and Taiwan crisis impact the solidarity of G20? You know, in Bali, you will have world leaders who will not be in talking in terms probably. You'll have Biden, you have President Putin, you have leaders of India and China. I'm not sure if they will have a group photo. I mean, that's maybe an extreme interpretation. So to what extent, I mean, how do you save G20 from, these geopolitical complications? And second question is that, G20 joint communiques are becoming kilometers long. Can you promise a shorter joint communique? The message gets lost in the process.
Thank you. So,
Madam Ambassador, my question is very simple. Singapore, South Korea, Japan, these countries are having a peace treaty. What about having, submarines in your country? Because unless and until you have the weaponry, the peace cannot prevail, and you are thousands of islands in the, ocean. So how do you keep your safety intact under this humongous task of war going on at different places?
thank you. The last question from the lady.
Hi, Ibu. I'm Premisha from ORF. You spoke a lot about continuity. I wanted to ask you, with India taking over the presidency in 2023, what are the lessons you think India can draw from Indonesia's experience? And second is, in terms of continuity, what are the policies Indonesia would want or say advise India to continue that Indonesia has already started during its presidency? What are the policies which say the projects that Indonesia is undertaking during its presidency? What are those projects that India should continue during its presidency in G20?
You have four different questions: IT, geopolitics, your Navy, and then finally on your new initiatives. And actually, we are finished with the questions. Sorry, I have been signaled no more time.
For the safety index, I will start with that. I think we are safe by UNCLOS. I think because with UNCLOS we become one. The islands that we have, we become one. And what is Alki, Hanafi? What is Alki? Sea lanes, right?
Right? Sea lanes of communication.
So we manage our only 3 sea lanes that we have. Only 1 Alki, 2 Alki, 3. And we don't want to be add. We don't want to add the Alki. So the ships, the boats, it's controlled by Indonesia. So I think how we keep the safety or security intact, because one principle of Nusantara, which is territorial integrity, and we are safe by UNCLOS because our previous Minister of Foreign Affairs, which is Mohtar Kusumatmaja, insists on having archipelagic state in UNCLOS. That is why we are safe by UNCLOS. And we are I think we are the champion on safeguarding the UNCLOS every now and then. We keep saying UNCLOS is very important. For our Navy is not big, but it's a strong, determinant armed forces. And we also have a very strong Coast Guard. The Coast Guard, we call it Bakamla. It's semi-armed forces. It's not pure Coast Guard. So they also guard our ZEE. So that is why we are very proud of our armed forces. I start with the last because this one is very difficult. For continuity, the lesson for sure, it's dialogue. If you see my voice is like this, it's because we are having so many coordination in terms of making sure the continuity is there. I talk a lot in many occasions, many avenues here in India also talking about that, because the continuity only happens when we talk, when we have dialogue. I talk to the media, I talk to all of those people who can shape the policies. I think the day after tomorrow, I will see the Shu Sherpa, Ambassador Abhay Thakur, for example. So the dialogue needs to be there to ensure that there is a continuity. On the projects, most of our projects start not by looking at the 3 themes, health, digital. No, we're looking at what are the challenges. Like, for example, Myanmar has problems on humanitarian assistance, especially the vaccine. We start from there, small, and then we make use of ASEC, the ASEAN Secretariat, to accommodate that. So it's not through looking at the theme, but looking at what are the needs. And hopefully India will do that again. Like, for example, we answered the question of finance in the meeting of working group on health. We have a joint meeting with the finance track to accommodate the needs of financing. So that is why we have this 5th FIF. So things like that. So we start from the needs, then we try to gather people and institutions and that. So the project comes not from the theme, but from the needs of developing countries. Um, Fortunately, during Raisina Dialogue, we had a chance of a dialogue between Indonesia, India, and Brazil, as well as South Africa. You were there. And we see that actually there are streamline of interests and needs. So I think maybe, like for example, digital. I know for sure that India will elevate digital agenda on our presidency into the next level because you are stronger than us. Cybersecurity, you will discuss. We cannot talk about cybersecurity because we don't have the capacity. So I think the continuity depends on the dialogue. Shorter joint communication. Let's hope so. Let's hope so. You should see the OIC or NAM, non-aligned movement, joint communique. You can make a kind of a novel or something out of that. Geopolitical crisis, we have experienced it since the beginning, like I said. If the countries, they don't want to take pictures together, so be it. It's not important. But they can sit together, at least. They say yes to our invitation, at least. They're there, although maybe some of them turn the seat around when someone speaks. So be it, but they're there. The seat is turning around. The ears, it's intact. So they're listening, actually. So geopolitical crisis and, well, G20 is not about solidarity. Maybe non-aligned movement is solidarity-based. ASEAN is solidarity-based. G20 is not about solidarity-based. G20 is about policies, policy making. On IT startup, sir, let me say this. This morning, I attended a discussion, very interesting, on because our foreign policy is based on very strong principle, which is free and active principle. Remember, Ambassador? Free and active principle. Can you imagine, do we have that in the digital world? Free and active. So I think the startup ecosystem, yes, it is important, but I need to underline the startup ecosystem is the same like SMEs maybe in our economic development. We need to make sure that the startup sustain, for sure, maintaining their support, which is finance, value chain, things like that, to cooperate. How to cooperate? Indonesia needs coder, for sure. And now I'm one of the, I have this reputation, ambassador, that now I become ambassador of education because now I want to have a lot of cooperation in education. One of them is coding with universities in India.
Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you have seen many years of very competent and articulate Indonesian ambassadors, and here is a great example too. So thank you very much for your candor and explaining this to us.
Thank you.
We wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Particularly for a short communique.
Yes.
And we hope all your guests respect your wonderful hospitality, of which you are famous.
Yes.
I would like to present you my book on Indonesia,
Well,
Masala Bumbu.
Masala
We
Bumbu.
hope it contributes to understanding, where the CEO has also contributed a chapter.
Thank you so much.
My
Thank
best
you.
wishes.
Ambassador,
Thank
you so
you.
much. Thank you. This is nice.
Thank you very much, both of you, for an engrossing hour. Before we leave, we'd like to gift you a small token of our appreciation. Go up.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think if you could just stand for a photograph.
Oh, you should join us. No. Thank you. Excellency, thank you so much.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed it. I did.
You did?
Yes, I think we got many things out of it.